And away we go. Alright, let's see what me, Eric, or Risk have sent in our podcast group chat since the last time I've recorded a podcast episode. It doesn't look like much, to be honest. However, it's good enough. At least, whatever goes on in this world, why do we do these things? And such. So, there's a there's a video I found on Reels, again, showing, well, firstly, there's text that's embedded within the video that reads, "A man at the Capitol accused the Artemis astronauts of lying about going to space." And in that video, just like what the text within that video is describing, I will play the audio for you now.
Yes. Stop lying. Stop acting. You all never went to space. Follow Jesus. God's watching you all. Stop lying to the public. Your psyop isn't working on millions of us. NASA's a joke. Repent before God, y'all. I see through your lies. I know you never went to space. God's watching you all.
All I can say is, dang, I never thought it would get that serious. And also, looking at that video, how the Artemis astronauts reacted, people would think they would just had a laugh about it, like, "Oh, don't be silly. Of course we went to space. There's footage, there's evidence, there's live streams. We talked to the people about it." I'd assumed the astronauts would have a laugh about it, because the science is there. The logistics, the very challenging logistics of launching a rocket and to some extent reusing it, if that is even possible. Why on earth would the Artemis astronauts get feel actual tense about it? It's not like there's anything to hide. It's not like this was all fake from the start. And I'm not saying it's true. Even if that is the case, who am I kidding? I try to give benefit of the doubt. I try to look the other side, the other perspective of things. Hopefully there is a chance to go to space. Yeah, unfortunately, it's at best we fall short, or at worst, nothing was ever real to begin with. I also try to have a laugh about things and try to be light-hearted about things as well. However, as the years go by, and looking at every event that goes on, it becomes increasingly hard to play along with the joke. It is also becoming increasingly hard to say that something isn't happening, even though there is literal proof and recorded evidence that what's being made out to be true turned out to be staged all along. I don't think there's anything else for me to add here. Maybe someone can prove me wrong that we can go to space, we can escape the firmament, the barrier between us and whatever the greater depths of space is. Who knows? For now, for the most part, it is becoming increasingly challenging to say that we can go to space. It is also becoming challenging that we are only limited to the resources on our planet right now, which is Earth. And even if there are people that that do look into these things, and they also say that with the evidence in front of me, I am convinced, says one person, that we can't go out of space. We can't go to outer space. We are forever limited to the resources on planet Earth. We can't leave our planet, says one person or someone. Yet there's still going to be people that doesn't think like that. They are fully invested about the space missions, the Apollos, the Artemises. And you know what? There's no arguing with people's opinions and perspectives. about what they see and what they do. All that we can do is go on about our lives, because that is all that we have going on for ourselves. Who knows? Maybe there could be a change of light. Until then, the evidence that's in front of us, the live streams, the videos online, is becoming increasingly prominent and also hard to ignore. And yeah, that is all of the videos, posts, messages, and whatnot that has been sent onto the podcast group chat since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. With that all being said, let's get right into the news. BTS wins Artist of the Year at fan-voted American Music Awards. On Monday, K-pop band BTS won Artist of the Year at the 2026 American Music Awards in Las Vegas, also claiming Song of the Summer for Swim, the lead track for its fifth studio album, Arirang. The full group comeback arrived after all 7 members completed military service earlier this year, with Arirang achieved strong commercial success upon its March release. According to Billboard's global exclusive US chart stated May 23rd, Swim topped the chart for the sixth time this year, while leader RM credited armies during acceptance, saying our biggest thanks and gratitude goes to the armies all over the world. Taylor Swift arrived at the 2026 AMAs with 8 nominations and has won Artist of the Year 7 times across her career, yet BTS secured the top prize in the fan-voted competition. Winners at the 2026 AMAs were determined entirely by fan voting based on streaming, sales, and touring metrics, with BTS's second Artist of the Year victory building on its historic 2021 win as the first Asian act to claim the prize. And you know what? BTS will continue to do very well, not just with awards or the streaming metrics, also the touring, the merchandise, and the legacy that will leave across the broader K-pop genre. I've said in many episodes ago that not saying that BTS gave birth to the genre that is K-pop. I would say BTS, given its influence and impact, is one of the few reasons, if not the only reason, why people across the globe outside of South Korea even know what K-pop is and gave life to other K-pop artists. That's at least my opinion and my perspective. Before BTS rose to fame in late 2010s, in the very late 2010s, I don't know what K-pop is. Of course, K-pop has existed for many decades. It's only in the late 2010s, with the rise of BTS as a band, is when I first heard about K-pop and other K-pop artists and other music culture within South Korea. So with that in mind, I'm not surprised that BTS has won another award again, and they will continue to do very well. Even if not everyone is into K-pop or even BTS, there's no doubt that BTS is one of the most recognizable names in the music industry, not just in K-pop, but globally across the world. Serbia president deepens ties with China while facing pressure from protests at home. On Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping held a welcome ceremony for Serbian President Alexander Vučić in Beijing, marking Vučić's first official state visit to China as he faces domestic political pressure at home. Massive anti-government protests erupted in Belgrade on Saturday, with clashes between demonstrators and riot police demanding accountability for a deadly train station collapse in November 2024 and greater governance transparency. The two nations signed over 20 cooperation agreements spanning in politics, trade, technology, and artificial intelligence, while Xi called for expanded cooperation in digital economy and green energy. Bilateral trade reached $6.49 billion in 2025, a 13% year-on-year increase. Xi awarded Vučić the Friendship Medal of the People's Republic of China and hailed the ironclad friendship between the nations, with Vučić describing the occasion as one of the most important moments of my life. Serbia committed to joining China's global development and global governance initiatives, while formally pursuing European Union membership and maintaining ties with Russia, and Vučić arguing Europe should engage China with confidence rather than suspicion. Now, even if the summary, the news headline didn't mention the train station collapse in November 2024, I would still say that, while Vučić is still going about his presidential duties, that train collapse in Novi Sad, yeah, I know not a lot of people. Why are you listening on me, Siri? Oh, my Apple Watch is trying to listen in on my conversation. So, yeah, if that news summary didn't mention the train collapse in Novi Sad, I would have still I would have still said that whilst Vučić is still going about his presidential duties, that train collapse many months ago is really one of the breaking points in Vučić's presidential run as Serbia's president. And I remember covering that story as it happened. Okay, not exactly at the moment. However, I had heard so much about that story before, talking with Eric last time. We did a podcast episode together, and Eric is kind of aware about that story as well. And given the severity, not just of the train crash, or the number of casualties resulting from that, also the response from Vučić is all that needs to be known about the current Serbian government. I mean, I'm not Serbian. I don't know much about what goes on in Serbia. I know last time I've heard of Serbia, that train station collapse was certainly a highlight, not just for last year. It's also been a highlight, in my opinion, for Serbia throughout my entire lifetime. Of course, there's other noticeable achievements in Serbia, like uh, the one time they debuted at Eurovision and won the same year. That really stood out. That's in terms of the music, for sure. Yeah, still the train station damages and casualties associated with it really stood out when I first heard about it, and it still does to this day. And I know a lot of people in Serbia are not going to let Vučić let that down. The Serbian people will continue to call out the government and the president until eventually he resigns, or at least until the next presidential election comes about and a new president is voted in. So let's see what happens next with Vučić and Xi Jinping, how they strengthen their relationships, and also with Russia, because I know Serbia and Russia have very strong ties in the government level, and yet somehow still wanting to become members of the European Union, which that's rather complicated, because we all know that the EU and Russia relations between the two are very intense and very controversial indeed, nonetheless. So it is bold to say that he wants to strengthen ties with China and Russia, yet also want to become members of the EU. So let's see how that goes. Maybe Vučić can pull it off for whatever years he has left as president of Serbia. I know it won't be for long, that's for sure. At least that's what I know. Ofgem to reveal July energy price cap as bill set to rise. On Wednesday, regulator Ofgem will reveal the annual energy price cap for July to September for typical dual fuel households across England, Scotland, and Wales. Energy costs have surged after Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route through which a fifth of the world's oil and gas passes. Analysts Cornwall Insight predicted last week the cap will rise by £209 to £1,850 from July 1st, a 13% increase from April's £1,641 annual rate. Chancellor Rachel Reeves stopped short of immediate energy measures, though the government insisted tackling the affordability crisis is our number one priority. Campaigners warned of an extremely difficult winter. Infrastructure damage means the October cap will likely remain high even if the Middle East conflict ends soon. Simon Francis, coordinator of the End Fuel Poverty Coalition, urged immediate government action before winter. Well, I will say one thing, or maybe more, but I know one thing's for certain. You can put whatever price cap you like, so that people in the UK or anywhere around the world don't have to pay extra for their energy costs. Don't think having an energy cap will be enough to soften the damages or the economic constraints that comes from the Strait of Hormuz. Price caps aren't going to cut it in this day and age, nor will they ever be enough to tackle whatever problems that exist today, energy-wise. What other alternative energy sources are you going to use to power the homes? Even when oil and gas will continue to still be used, and they will, what about renewables like wind power, solar panels, hydropower, and another thing which I can't think of right now for some reason? You got to diversify the energy sources which are powering our homes. If you're only relying on just gas or just oil to power your homes, then again, no amount of energy caps is going to save citizens from paying extra for their energy bills. Energy diversification is key, whether people like talking about renewable energies or not. I certainly am aware of that. People will say that renewable energies and climate change is a hoax, is a scam. Well, if it's a hoax or a scam, then how come are we still hearing about it? Why are there still energy? Why are there more wind turbines being popping about? Why are we seeing more solar panels being installed? And especially in wide open fields, which I still prefer solar panels to be installed on top of parking spaces. At least at least it's more efficient use of using space on the ground. And what about the hydropower? I know hydropower is being popping about more recently. Yeah, there isn't much talk about hydropower. There's so much water around us. Use the freaking sea or the ocean. Anyway, I remember somewhere in the 70s there was a major oil crisis. I'm not sure whereabouts in the 70s. I know the 70s was a moment in time where fuel costs were certainly high compared to previous years before, and given the impact of that, and given the impact of the oil crisis in the 70s, it has made an impact for a lot of countries, especially in Europe and the US. At least for Denmark and the Netherlands, last time I remember, that 70s oil crisis was so impactful. Both the Danish and Dutch governments thought of an idea where on Sundays don't use your car, ride your bicycles instead, and then the rest for the two nations were history. And yeah, and now The two respective countries have one of the most comprehensive and expansive cycling networks and infrastructure the world has ever seen. But I'm not saying that all countries should start putting up cycle lanes. Especially don't do it if there aren't going to be people going to a particular neighborhood in a given community or district. The point I'm making is, when an oil crisis hits about, it really encourages governments to think outside of the box, not just with oil consumption and gas usage. It also gets people thinking about if a crisis like that happens again, which it has many decades ago, what solutions and initiatives are we going to put in to prepare ourselves for next time when the oil crisis or oil prices become more expensive? And you know what? All the power to them. Enhanced games, steroids, anabolic and other drugs authorized. On Sunday, May 24th, 2026, the Enhanced Games opened at Resorts World in Las Vegas, hosting 72 athletes permitted to use performance-enhancing drugs banned in traditional competitions. Founded by entrepreneurs Aaron D'Souza and Maximilian Martin, the privately funded games are backed by tech billionaire Peter Thiel and venture capital firm 1789 Capital to create competition where elite athletes push the limits of human performance. With a $25 million prize pool, the company reported that 91% of competing athletes used testosterone or testosterone esters and 79% used human growth hormone administered through personalized medical protocols. U.S. Anti-Doping Agency CEO Travis Tygart called the Games a dangerous clown show that puts profit over principle, while the International Olympic Committee and World Anti-Doping Agency condemned the event. Following the Killers' closing concert Sunday night, researchers will study participants for 5 years to determine the long-term health impacts of the performance-enhancing substances used. And before I talk about the details of that summary of the enhanced games, I've also seen social media posts about the enhanced games. Hence why I actually had to look for the story, because I know that's been popping about and currently trending. I've heard quite recently today that there were some athletes that who took part in the enhanced games, yet they didn't take any drugs or anything that traditional competitions would prohibit it. Now, they may not have broken world records, yet they still managed to win each wave or round of each event compared to other athletes that did use performance-enhancing drugs. So now begs the question, is taking performance-enhancing drugs worth it in the end, or is it just a waste of money and a waste of potential longevity with long-term health? We'll have to wait and find out. There's going to be observations in the next 5 years to see if there's going to be any serious impact amongst the athletes that do take these drugs to do well in the enhanced games. You reap what you sow. And now I was wondering, and I thought other traditional competitions would have just outright banned these athletes from competing in their respective events because, well, you're taking abuse out of the games, you're making a fool out of yourselves in the sports in question. But no, the International Olympic Committee and other committees for sports, that I don't believe from what I've seen, they're not going to just outright ban athletes from competing. They're just going to observe the effects of the athletes in the next 5 years to see if using these performance-enhanced drugs to do well in compete in sporting events would have any negative impact on their health, their physicality, and also their long-term longevity, as in could their lifespans be shortened because the dosage of these drugs have altered their DNA, hindered their projected abilities, and so on. So, now as for the game itself, yeah, I, I just see this as some kind of filler. Even if there's a valid argument about pushing human capabilities beyond our own physical limits, this is not the way. Using performance-enhanced drugs, or just drugs in general, is not the answer. And even if we do get an idea of what the results come out of it, is it really worth it? Are you willing to take on the toll and the challenges that comes with taking these drugs? Because if you don't want to go through these side effects, then the answer is simple. Do not take these drugs to begin with. Nor should you ever take these drugs at all. Yep, people are going to do it anyway, because they don't think like, not a lot of people think like that. They want to win, and they want to get stronger and stronger, faster and faster, and so on and so forth. Now, it is anyone's guess if the enhanced games is going to become an annual event, or take place every few years, or if it's even going to happen again at all. Maybe this is just a one-time thing just to maybe prove a point, a commentary on society, or maybe just out of curiosity. It doesn't make much of a difference for people to use drugs to enhance their performance to do well in sporting events. And from the social media posts I've seen about the enhanced games, where a handful of athletes that took part in the event and won each of their rounds or waves or rounds weren't even using drugs at all, they were all clean and all natural, then that's really going to put pressure on the question about is it worth using drugs to enhance your performance? Now, it could be a yes, but as of now, from my perspective, it's a no. It is still possible for athletes who do compete in the enhanced games, they can still win each of their rounds or just the entire event as a whole without taking anything to improve on their abilities, their current abilities. They could just be all natural or clean and still go on to win the whole thing, even when everyone else is jacked up or taking whatever amount of substances that they have taken. And you know what? Good on those athletes. It's good to see that there are athletes who are certain and they do believe that they can win events without taking such drugs. I like that. And I hope this trend continues if the enhanced games ever continues in the future. I'm not going to say it won't happen, I'm not saying they won't have happened again, or even if they will happen again, just not just frequently, because, negative press, why are you being so meany-weeny about it? Like, shut up, man. So yeah, only time will tell if an event like the enhanced games is gonna happen again, and also if maybe more athletes take part, more so which they come all natural and all clean, taking part in each event, and go on to win the whole thing. That would be the greatest story that I'll ever hear in my life. At least one of the greatest stories I'll ever hear in my life. And that is it for the episode.